Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. It is Tuesday, February 7th at 10:02 a.m. and we are here for an allowable ex parte briefing regarding South Carolina National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program, also known as South Carolina NEVI Plan, and we are pleased to have making the presentation some gentlemen from the South Carolina Department of Transportation. And we have with us Mr. Justin Powell, Mr. Rob Biedenbaugh from DOT, and who's present from the Office of Regulatory Staff is our third-party mediator.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Chad Torrey, Staff Attorney for ORS, here as the designee of the Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Torrey, and not mediator, but neutral, I should have said, instead of mediator. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. I apologize for neglecting that. Present in the hearing room, we have Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Carolee Williams, and with us and Chair Belser, and with us virtually, we have Commissioner Irvin and Commissioner Caston. I'm going to recognize our staff counsel, Ms. Sandra Moser, to prepare or read the docket and give us some instructions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners, and to all who are present here today, either in person or virtually. Today is Tuesday, February 7th, 2023, and we are here in the Commission's briefing room pursuant to a notice of request for an allowable ex parte briefing. The briefing is from the South Carolina Department of Transportation regarding the South Carolina National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, or the SC NEVI plan, about their formula program. This, I would remind everyone, is a briefing. It is not a hearing. The briefing must be conducted in compliance with the provisions of South Carolina Code Section 58-3-260C, and the requirements of that statute are, in part, that the allowable ex parte briefing be confined to the subject matter which has been noticed. I would therefore ask the presenters, commissioners, and staff to please refrain from discussing any matters that are not related to the specific topic. The statute prohibits any presenter, commissioners, or commission staff from requesting or giving any commitment, predetermination, or prediction regarding any action by any commissioner as to an ultimate issue which either is or is likely to come before the commission. I would also ask that the presenters, staff, and commissioners would ask them to please refrain from referencing any report, article, statute, or document of any kind that are not included in today's presentation. A copy of any document which is referenced during the briefing must be provided to the Office of Regulatory Staff for inclusion into the record, which will be certified to the Chief Clerk of the Commission, Ms. Jocelyn Boyd. If anyone during the course of this briefing exceeds the scope or does not comply with or fails to conduct themselves within the provisions of South Carolina Code Section 58-3-260, governing allowable ex parte briefings, it is expected that a contemporaneous objection will be made. And finally, everyone in attendance today, either in person or virtually, must sign in or register. Everyone in the hearing room or watching virtually must read, sign, and return the form which you were given at the door, or the form which will be emailed to you for your virtual appearance, which will include instructions and the deadline for its return. It is required by law for each attendee, whether attending virtually or in person, to certify that the requirements contained in Section 58-3-260C have been complied with in regards to this presentation. Thank you all for your time and your attention. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Moser. Gentlemen, I know that if you haven't been here before, the instructions sound a bit ominous. We just have a lot of statutory requirements that we have to make sure that are met to be able, so that ORS can certify the proceedings. So Y'all go ahead with your presentation, and we'll do the best to keep up with everything to make sure that we can certify it. So the main thing is that we do need this certification forms that everybody in person and virtually will sign, and provided that we haven't gone past our statutory restrictions, then we expect everybody to sign those. Anyway, but thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to share this information with us. We do appreciate it because this topic is something we've been hearing about a good bit. So I will turn the floor over to you. If you are welcome to stay seated. If you prefer to stand, we have a podium and I think a clicker for the PowerPoint. We just want you to be comfortable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan, or NEVI. My name is Justin Powell. I am the Chief of Staff for the South Carolina Department of Transportation. Joining me is Rob Beambaugh, who is our Director of Engineering Support. He has been tasked to develop the NEVI plan for South Carolina. Mr. Beambaugh is going to do the bulk of the presentation today, but I wanted to make a few introductory remarks about the NEVI plan. Before 2021, SCDOT's interest in electric vehicles was really limited to understanding the impacts that electric vehicles may have on our primary revenue source, which is the motor fuel tax. This was especially in terms of meeting our terms and obligations of investing in the state's infrastructure. We were one of the first states in the union to adopt a fee on hybrid and electric vehicles. This was to gain some, but not complete equity between what an internal combustion engine pays in gas tax versus what an electric vehicle uses on the state highway system. That changed in November of 2021 when the President signed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This was a significant increase in federal infrastructure funding, not only for the department, but for a variety of other entities. For SCDOT, this meant roughly a 30% increase in our federal funding. This was primarily for items like roads and for transit, but included in that expansive bill was funding to develop a national electric vehicle charging network. South Carolina will receive approximately $70 million over the next 5 years for that purpose. When SCDOT was established in 1917, our mission then was not to facilitate the development of gas stations. To that end, this is a new mission for SCDOT on top of our existing 10-year plan to rebuild our state's transportation network. We do not foresee this as a long-term mission for the department, but a defined program to seed the adoption of electric vehicles. We are being very deliberative and measured in our approach to the NEVI plan, as we are not interested in being on the bleeding edge of change. We are working with an interagency working group established by executive order by the Governor McMaster. That working group is bringing together a full spectrum of state agencies together to discuss the implementation of electric vehicles. Our next meeting is actually on Friday, February 10th. The NEVI plan will make an important contribution towards advancing the adoption of electric vehicles in South Carolina. As electric vehicles are being adopted, there are numerous public policy questions that will need to be addressed by state government in the coming years that will not be within the scope of the NEVI plan. That's paying for transportation with less reliance on the gas tax, the potential increase in electric demand, paying for new generation and transmission to pay for that demand, and then disposing of batteries once they've reached the end of their useful life. I anticipate these conversations will continue for the next several years and will involve a multitude of decision makers and policymakers. We look forward to discussing the plan today with you and answering any questions the Commission might have. I'll ask Mr. Beambaugh to take it from here.
Mr. Beambaugh?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and Commission. Thank you very much, Justin. We look forward to having an opportunity to share information today on behalf of SCDOT about our electric vehicle charging program. Starting out, I'm going to give you an overview of what we're going to be discussing today. I'm going to give you an overview of the Federal National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program. I promise it will not be acronym heavy. This is one of the main acronyms that I would like you to recall as NEVI, National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure. I will also provide an overview of the South Carolina specific NEVI plan, the timeline for implementation of our plan, the funding associated with the plan, Governor McMaster's executive order, an overview of the charge and the goals for the Interagency EV Working Group, as well as an opportunity for the Commission to ask questions today. So the Federal National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program, as Chief of Staff Powell mentioned, that was part of IIJA, and it was a dedicated initiative to expand EV charging on the national network. And there is a website where you can go to learn more about the federal government's initiative for NEVI by looking at driveelectric.gov. Now, in summary, the initiative has a goal of providing 500,000 EV chargers nationally by the year 2030 to support the national network and help ease that range anxiety that EV owners may experience from time to time. The focus is on the major interstate corridors. So in South Carolina, one of the requirements for NEVI was to designate the corridors that we're going to spend this money on as alternative fuel corridors. So in South Carolina, we work in very close partnership with ORS, the State Energy Office, as the lead entity to designate those alternative fuel corridors. We work in tandem with them to make sure that we have a strategic and clear plan for where those AFCs are at in the state, or those alternative fuel corridors. And in South Carolina, in summary, it's our interstates. So that's considered our national network, and that's what we're going to be focusing on as part of our NEVI formula program. Emphasis will be placed on rural areas of the interstate corridors. That is to promote equity, but also we see the NEVI funds as seed money, as our Chief of Staff Powell alluded to. Those seed funds can be used to jumpstart EV charging in places where private sector may not be as amenable to using their funds because of the profit margins or other considerations. There is a strong equity component to the NEVI formula program that we're going to be working diligently to ensure we achieve. And to receive those funds, we were required to develop a plan by August 1st. That plan is available online at our website, as stated here on the screen, but it's www.scdot.org/NEVI. To start the plan with a tight timeline for turnaround, we immediately partnered with our Federal Highway Administration office here in South Carolina. We refer to that as our division office, and also with Office of Regulatory Staff, specifically the State Energy Office. So those became very key partners for us to put together the plan that met the requirements set forth by the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. So to explain what the Joint Office is, that was a newly formed office on the federal level that combined U.S. DOT staff with U.S. Department of Energy staff to form what is commonly referred to as the Joint Office. But they are technically the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. As I stated, we had to produce that plan by August 1st in order to receive the funding to South Carolina. Good news is we met our deadline. We turned in a plan and we received approval on September 27th, 2002. And that was a milestone date for us because that opened up the federal funds to be able to flow to South Carolina so we could then start our process. And we have initiated an internal process to hire a consultant to bring on expertise to help us refine and develop our plan. Because as Chief of Staff Powell alluded to, we recognized with a great deal of humility that we were not going to be the tip of the spear nationally on this topic. So by reaching out to hire a consultant, we're going to bring in expertise to help us take our initial plan, which was truly a plan to plan. So our August 1st plan established that the overall framework for which we knew we would then do a much deeper dive to strategically and equitably identify specific locations for the EV charging. We will release a draft scope for that consultant for market research purposes, which is a process common to SCDOT, particularly with an abstract program such as NEVI. So we put this scope out to industry to give them an opportunity to give us feedback on pitfalls or rabbit holes that we don't understand or foresee, so we can polish that scope and come up with something that we feel like will be very competitive and well received by the private sector. That will go out this week, and then in the process, once we refine the scope based on the feedback we get, we will then go through our formal process to procure a consultant in partnership with the State Fiscal Accountability Authority. So one of the key functions of the NEVI formula program is to obtain stakeholder input. We want to make sure that we move in such a way that the public understands our goals, but also that their feedback is incorporated into every step we take. So we envision that in public engagement initiative starting around the middle of this year, contingent upon us getting a consultant on board. We anticipate approximately 1 year to do the statewide public engagement initiative to receive feedback, with ultimately a goal of deploying EV chargers in late 2024. We also plan to build upon and utilize the Office of Regulatory Staff's EV Stakeholder Initiative report to complement the public engagement that we're undertaking and make sure that we do utilize those findings in conjunction with our initiative to expedite the process. And certainly all of these dates are subject to change based on what kind of issues, or concerns we uncover through the public engagement process. The funding structure nationally is $7.5 billion. That was part of the IIJA. $5 billion of that was set aside for the NEVI formula program. And there is also $2.5 billion set aside for a discretionary grant program. Currently, we do not have any visibility into the $2.5 billion discretionary grant program. We are awaiting further guidance and information from the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. But out of the $5 billion dedicated to NEVI, as Chief of Staff Powell mentioned, South Carolina will be receiving $70 million over a 5-year period. So the breakdown for that is year one, approximately $10.3 million has already come to us upon approval of our NEVI plan, with years 2 through 5 bringing in approximately $15 million per year. And one key item to remember there is there's no expiration date for those federal funds, and also the $15 million annually is contingent upon no federal deductions being pulled out to help fund the joint office or some other initiative that we don't have visibility into at this time. To complement and provide statewide guidance concerning electric vehicles in the state, Governor McMaster issued Executive Order 2022-31. That is available on the website shown in the presentation. In summary, the executive order was comprised of three major components. Economic development was the first component, where Department of Commerce is charged as the lead on that front. There is a singular point of contact that was established through that executive order to serve the needs of industry and commerce looking at South Carolina, so they can reach out directly to Department of Commerce in lieu of trying to shotgun blast out information throughout state government to figure out who they need to talk to. So that common point of contact has been established, and we've aligned ourselves at SCDOT with that individual. Workforce was another component. The successful implementation of the NEVI formula program is going to require hands and feet to make it effective. Part of that will be establishing and creating a workforce that can support the construction, inspection, ongoing maintenance, and operations of EV charging in the state. So the Department of Employment Workforce will be the lead entity on that component. And lastly, the Interagency EV Working Group was established with SCDOT being the lead agency to pull key state agencies together so that we can ensure we're singing off the same sheet of music and moving in tandem as government to ensure that the NEVI formula program is successfully and effectively implemented with all parties having a voice. The Interagency EV Working Group had our first meeting on January 4th. Those are publicized to the public or advertised to the public. As Chief of Staff Powell mentioned, our next meeting is this Friday, February 10th. And the common goal, as I said, was just ensure that a very well coordinated and comprehensive plan for the entire state by making sure we're all in the room and we're all sharing our concerns, ideas, and potential pitfalls so we can meet them head on. Ultimately, this group will guide the placement of EV charging in South Carolina and the implementation of those NEVI formula funds by polishing and helping to refine the South Carolina DOT NEVI plan. We will be strategically reaching out to key stakeholders to obtain their perspectives. And just to clarify on that, there will be a statewide, very broad stakeholder engagement initiative that our consultant will undertake. That will be a series of online and in-person meetings around the state. But the Interagency EV Working Group stakeholder engagement part, we envision that being more of a strategic engagement with key industry partners such as electric utility providers, potential hosts for the sites, and other key partners that we want to hear from in a controlled manner in front of the EV Working Group. We are also charged at SCDOT with identifying a one-stop shop funding opportunity list for the state and interested parties that are looking for EV charging funding opportunities. So while we will not administer all of those funding opportunities, we do anticipate that being a clearinghouse or a summation of opportunities that we maintain on our website. The members are identified on this slide as being the Governor's Office, Office of Regulatory Staff, Department of Commerce, Department of Employment and Workforce, Department of Motor Vehicles, the Department of Health and Environmental Control, and the State Fiscal Accountability Authority. We have also recently added the South Carolina Technical College System as a new member. And per the executive order, we have the ability to bring on others as needed once we get down the road to start to uncover the unknowns that we have to meet head on. So we do envision more teammates coming on potentially as the stones are unturned and questions are established. So the goals, seek to understand before being understood. That is a quote from Stephen Covey. We very much took that to heart at SCDOT because we were not the tip of the spear nationally on electric vehicle charging. One of the first phone calls that we made as an agency was out to our sister states on the West Coast so we could understand where they had great success and where they stubbed their toe as they delved into the world of EV charging. So that is a statement that has brought us great humility, and we are certainly utilizing that to make sure before we educate people, we're educating ourselves. And part of the goals of the Interagency EV Working Group is to make sure we are all at the same knowledge baseline as a working group before we start to make decisions. So our first several meetings have really been focused on educating the members of the working group so they can have perspective, insight, and factual information to form their opinions as they move forward. We will be meeting monthly, the Interagency EV Working Group, throughout the need for the working group to be in place, which I do envision will be a year or more. Ultimately, we're going to deliver a very strategic, well-coordinated plan, and our key charge is to make sure that we have no stranded assets at the end of the day. We don't want to utilize taxpayer funds to build something that is unneeded, non-functional, not in the right place, and it certainly doesn't meet equity needs or the needs of the citizens. So no stranded assets. Now, on our website, we do have the plan available. We also have frequently asked questions to help people understand the plan, and relevant links to tools and resources that in some cases were produced by Office of Regulatory staff, and others are national information or national sources to help with questions. So I'll turn it over for questions now, if that pleases the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Biedenbaugh and Mr. Powell. We appreciate your overview and description of the SC Navy plan. Commissioners, questions for our presenters? Vice Chair Powers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this presentation. When you first started, I want to say you mentioned these initials, IJA.
Oh, yes, sir.
I did not know what that was. Can you tell me?
Yes, sir. I apologize for that. That was the second acronym that I did not explain. It was the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act.
Okay.
It is,
well, I should have known that. Thank you.
Commissioner, just to follow on to Mr. Biedenbaugh's comment, it is also commonly, the official legislative title was the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA. You will also hear that described as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. They're one and the same, but they're basically two titles floating around for the same piece of legislation.
Thank you. I just missed it. Thank you.
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Carolee Williams?
Thank you. I'll add my thanks for your being here and demystifying, things that we've read about in the paper and, both your philosophical approach as well as what you're doing. Mr. Powell, in your introductory remarks, you listed a series of things that were not within your scope. Some of those, I suspect, are going to be within our scope. Do you foresee an opportunity for you to pass on lessons learned and suggestions to us going forward? You may know that we will open a docket on April 1st related to a lot of those items that you listed were not in your purview.
Certainly, I think one of the items I think that we're looking at, so the funding that was provided by the federal government that Mr. Biedenbaugh is leading point on getting developed right now, basically has set out, I would say, a very basic standard of that. Basically, our interstate corridors should have one charging station about approximately every 50 miles, and there's kind of a defined standard of that. So we will be looking at directing our funds basically towards those purposes after analyzing where charging stations already exist in the state. I think there are broader public policy questions out there. So that our focus and our intent is to really comply with the federal request of working towards seeding those things. I think there is a broader discussion. One of the issues I think we've discussed internally is while one of these level 3 charging stations that the federal government is requiring us to provide run in the ballpark of $750,000 to $1.5 million. I think one of the challenges we see is grid availability in our rural areas. So where that may make the most sense on a map for spacing may not be necessarily where the infrastructure, the electric infrastructure is there. So we may be spending significant dollars facilitating the upgrade of electrical infrastructure to get it to a particular location where it complies with the federal guidelines. So I think there will be issues like that are going to continue. I think it's, but the overall demand on the grid that comes from an electric vehicle is significant in terms of the number of kilowatt hours that are pulled down to maintain these vehicles. So I think there are, that issue is beyond the purview of the Department of Transportation, probably will be subject to discussion by the General Assembly in the coming years, but I don't want to presuppose where they're going on that.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Commissioners,
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Irvin.
thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate your presentation and look forward to learning more. My question is, and I was trying to listen carefully to the folks that have been invited to be a part of the group. Have you reached out to the engineering department at either Clemson University or the University of South Carolina to see if they might provide some expertise in this area?
Commissioner, this is Rob Edenbaugh. Yes, sir. We have made initial contact with Clemson University and CUI CAR at the governor's EV summit that occurred in the latter part of last year. Now, we have not formally asked them to serve alongside of us, but we do envision bringing them in as part of the automotive component to share information with the interagency EV working group. So just to be clear, not as a member of the interagency EV working group, but as a stakeholder that can provide us with feedback and expertise.
That's excellent. I'm glad to hear that because I know when North Carolina went through this process, they worked closely with North Carolina State's engineering department and seemed to work out well to have them involved as a stakeholder. So I'm pleased to hear about that. And as you know, there's a lot of great research going on at Clemson in automotive, specifically in the automotive research and ICAR, which might benefit in terms of what best practices are and that type thing. So I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, any further questions? Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It's been very helpful. And just to follow up on one of Commissioner Irwin's questions there in connection with who all is part of the group that you've invited, have you talked with like convenience store, trade associations, or that sort of a thing?
Yes, sir, we have. We've had conversations with several individual convenience store owners that have expressed interest. So while we are not in a position to engage in any sort of commitment or agreements with them, we have received input showing their support. One of the upcoming meetings of the Interagency EV Working Group has already established a representative from the Petroleum Convenience Station group to come in to share their perspectives. We actually have them lined up, and I apologize, I don't recall right now for either the March or April meeting. And so just to complement that and to understand better why we're talking to convenience stores, Chief of Staff Powell mentioned the 50-mile spacing along the interstates. There is also a federal requirement of no more than 1 travel mile off of the interstate. So certainly when you think of getting off of an interstate at an exit or an interchange, when you think of the things you commonly see around those interchanges, those are going to be the kind of partnerships, those entities that are there are going to be the kind of partners we're looking for to maximize a return on the public dollars that are put out there. And certainly a secondary benefit of having a lighted, safe, convenient location for people to pull over and have the charging. So we have engaged, and we anticipate to continue to engage with that industry.
Commissioner, just to tack on to what Mr. Beanbaugh said, I think the ultimate implementation plan, which is still to be developed through public engagement, is to really solicit public-private partnerships by which entities, a convenience store may be a likely candidate, but we're not limiting to that might be willing to host one of these chargers, and then our funding would be used as seed money basically to facilitate that development. And then we would intend to, as Rob kind of talked about, no stranded assets, exit from that point, and that be a sustainable private sector enterprise at that point forward.
Well, and another one of my thoughts is that there are already, a lot of employees, and you talk about economic development and equity, and there are rural areas where I guess you put them all together, and there are a fair number of employees there already, and just be good to have input to potentially be able to work with them. And I'm trying to understand, what can the money be invested in? The charging stations, new land, transmission distribution lines. I don't know that I understand that at this point. Can you help me with that a little bit?
Sure. So the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act basically kind of set up one of these items in a provision. So the items that are eligible, the heavy emphasis so far has been on electric vehicles that actually can be used for other alternative fueling corridors, hydrogen, propane as well. But the electric vehicle has been the emphasis of the administration and our focus so far. Where the eligibilities generally lie are on the acquisition of said charging infrastructure, but also the planning activities that we have, but also could be used for investments necessary for utility upgrades necessary to get to that charging location. As Mr. Beanbaugh referred to, they're basically establishing a standard of being within 1 mile of the interstate, and so that kind of narrows our scope of where the facilities could be placed.
And Chief Staff Powell, I will also add that the joint office is still feeling their way through this program. It moved very quickly. The funds came out extremely fast, and they've issued a series of notices of proposed rulemaking. Those are commonly called NPRMs, whereas states get further into their programs, questions are coming up on what all is eligible for those funds, and peripheral items such as awnings over the charging to protect people from the sun, how much other infrastructure can be funded with those monies, such as paving a surface or possibly making drainage improvements, the lighting associated with it. All those items are being considered and vetted. And I think we anticipated SCDOT additional guidance and clarification coming out from the joint office as they continue to receive these questions from around the country.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Commissioners? Commissioner Williams?
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Just to piggyback on that, and to see if I understood it correctly, the infrastructure that the NEVI funds clearly support is the electrical vehicle charging units. And then the peripheral, as you described it, are going through that rulemaking process. Is that correct? Is that the primary?
That's correct, with clarification coming out with that. And just to piggyback on what Chief of Staff Powell alluded to, is they've already made it very, very clear, the joint office has, that the EV charging units themselves are eligible.
Right.
And then when we get outside of that component is where the gray starts to kick in, that we're going to be moving very methodically and strategically to make sure that we identify sites that don't require a lot of upgrades so we can maximize a return on those public dollars. But certainly we do anticipate more guidance coming from the joint office to add clarity to all the minutia and specific items and peripherals that'll be eligible.
Is land allowable?
Not to my knowledge at this point. That is one of the items that, to maximize a return on the taxpayer money, we're going to be looking at a private-public partnership so that we do not have to purchase land. And certainly our goal is to move forward in a way that does not require us to purchase anything more than we absolutely have to meet our charge. And by having private sector step up to provide things such as the land to place the chargers.
Right. And I think you mentioned utility upgrade. Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility to our understanding. And once again, our goal is going to be to do a very deep dive data analysis in close conjunction with electric utility providers, so that we're not having to spend the EV charging money on electric utility grid upgrades. So while it may be an eligible expense based on our current understanding, certainly our goal is to pick sites that do not require extensive upgrades on the electric utility grid to host the chargers.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarity. Mr. Powell, would you mind finding in your notes what you identified as the public policy areas that were not included in your scope and rereading them?
Sure.
It was 4 or 5 things.
Happy to do so, and happy to elaborate on any questions you may have on those. Certainly, I think the first one is being the paying for transportation outside of the gas tax. Right now, we rely upon the gas tax to provide the bulk of our state funding for roads and bridges. The potential increase in electrical demand that can come from an electric vehicle, which can be significant in terms of the kilowatts consumed. The paying for new generation and transmission to meet that potential demand that will result if more cars become electric than being gasoline powered. And then one of the other issues is the environmental issue related to disposing of batteries once they hit the end of their useful lives.
So, do you envision addressing the charging, the cost associated with the charging?
So what I would say is there are going to be elements in when we put out these proposals, but the charging, there was legislation passed last year to define a charging station, 2 years ago, I believe. We can provide that after the fact, was basically to say it's not a utility anymore and to be basically a service, a sales tax derived service provision. So what I would say is we will look to make sure that the rates are fair, that the companies that will be likely putting these out. But at the end of the day, we don't see ourselves in the role of dictating rates and charges outside of kind of the base rate charges that are already being paid by those companies that will be setting up the charging stations going forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you both.
Commissioners, any further questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Irvin?
thank you. Just to follow up on Commissioner Williams' question. Since the department owns the rest stops along South Carolina interstates, are any rest stops under consideration if they have electrical service there? Would that be a possibility, or do you know yet?
Commissioner Irvin, that excellent question. When this bill was adopted last year, that was actually our first location that we would want to put them at, basically because they are pretty much, rest areas are about approximately 40 to 50 miles spaced around the interstate corridors. There are prohibitions in federal law about commercial activities within within the sphere of the rest areas. So we don't have in our rest areas that you'll notice the Commission on the Blind runs the vending machines. That's a nonprofit activity. We are not allowed to do commercial activities. And so absent us giving away the electricity for free for the charging, to have a company come in and do that would be a violation. And that was pretty quickly established by the Federal Highway Administration that we could not engage in commercial activities related to charging at the rest areas.
Thank you.
Commissioner Irvin, is there anything else?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas, let me just ask a question. Mr. Powell, you referenced a statute that was passed a couple of years ago. You're talking about the South Carolina statute.
Yes,
Is that correct? And that would be 2021. I think it was Act 46. Is that what you're referencing?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just saying that so we have it in the record to follow up on. Thank you. Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. In terms of potential other group as stakeholder involvement, I guess, how about any of the big companies that are active in manufacturing the charging equipment and those kinds of things? Like one name I've heard is ChargePoint. I know little or nothing about it other than it's a big company.
Yeah, no, we're looking at engaging with those companies that are kind of entering that market or are in that market. We're also engaging with our manufacturers here who have been making a significant investment in electric vehicles as well within the state. So we'll make sure we get them on the list.
And Commissioner Thomas, to add to that, we do anticipate engaging with them through that broad stakeholder engagement initiative that will be statewide, and to ensure that industry in South Carolina, as well as certainly the automobile industry and suppliers, but also the EV chargers, the folks that make those are evolving very quickly. So we anticipate more coming online as we take more time to develop our plan. And that's why we certainly will be reaching out to them through that stakeholder engagement process, those that are in place now and those that are being formed as we speak.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Anything further? Mr. Torrey, I apologize that I did not recognize you for any additional instructions at the beginning. Have we missed anything that you need to advise us of?
That's quite all right, Madam Chair. No, we have not missed anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Powell, Mr. Biedenbaugh, thank y'all very much. This has been most informative, and we certainly appreciate your attendance here and filling us in on what's going on with the South Carolina NEVI program. So just really appreciate your work in preparing your presentation and in giving it today. Thank you very much. And with that, is there anything further, Mr. Torrey?
Nothing further, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
With that, we'll close this allowable ex parte presentation and wish everyone a good day. Thank you. We're adjourned.